This happened 2 summers ago, when I was driving from Colorado to California for a cousin's wedding. I decided to break the trip into 2 days instead of trying to power through it all at once, especially since I'd gotten a late start. I figured I'd just grab a cheap room off the highway somewhere, crash for the night, and finish the drive the next morning. Around 10:30 p.m., I pulled off near a small town in Utah. It wasn't completely rural, but it was the kind of place where everything closes early and the streets feel empty after dark. Quiet in that weird, hollow way. No traffic, no movement, like the whole town had powered down for the night. I found a low-budget motel just off the highway, the kind with an old neon sign that just says motel in red letters, half of them burned out, buzzing faintly like an old bug zapper. It wasn't the kind of place you want to stay more than a night, but it was cheap, and the guy at the front desk didn't seem to care about anything except getting me checked in. No ID check, no questions, just a tired grunt and a room key card. That should have been a red flag, honestly, but I was more concerned about getting some sleep. My room was on the second floor, all the way at the end. No elevator, but just one flight of outdoor stairs. The exterior hallway smelled faintly of mildew and cheap disinfectant, and the overhead lights flickered like they were hanging on by a thread. I remember thinking it was almost too quiet, not just a lack of people, but this eerie stillness. No TV noise coming from the rooms, no cars passing on the nearby road. Just silence and the faint buzz of my door light. Still, I was exhausted. I turned on the wall AC unit. It sputtered to life with a low hum, took a quick shower, and flopped onto the bed. I started scrolling through my phone for a bit, just to unwind. That's when I realized I hadn't grabbed any bottled water, and the motel definitely didn't provide any. Not even a plastic cup by the sink. My throat was dry from driving all day, and I figured I'd go grab a bottle and maybe a snack. According to the map taped to the back of the door, there was a vending area near the front office, just around the back where the ice machine was. So I threw on my shoes and headed out. It was about 11:15 p.m. The air outside was thick and still warm, with that stagnant summer heat that just lingers after the sun's gone down. All I could hear were crickets and the occasional clunk from an AC unit kicking on. As I walked down the hall, I passed one other guest, an older guy in a white undershirt, leaning against his doorframe with a cigarette dangling from his fingers. He didn't say anything, just nodded once like he'd seen this scene 100 times before. The vending area was tucked into a narrow alcove behind the office. One weak, flickering bulb overhead barely lit the space, casting long, shaky shadows. It looked like a place you weren't supposed to be after dark, and I had that weird, prickling sensation that I wasn't alone, even though there was no one in sight. As I turned the corner, I heard the ice machine running. Nothing strange about that, but then I realized it wasn't the normal churn and clunk sound. It was off. It was wheezing, not loudly, but enough that I paused. It sounded like it was struggling or jammed, like it was trying to work, but couldn't. I moved past it to the soda machine, slipped in a few bills, and hit the button for water. As I waited for the bottle to drop, I glanced back at the ice machine. That's when I noticed something that made me pause. There was a trail of water coming from beneath it. Not unusual for an ice machine, but this one was different. The trail extended several feet onto the concrete walkway, and in the puddle were faint footprints. Not full ones, more like the impressions left by wet shoes. But the thing that got me, the prints were leading away from the ice machine, not toward it, and they just stopped. Right there, no fade, no turnaround. Like someone had walked out of the machine and vanished into thin air. I looked around, half expecting someone to be lurking nearby, but the place was deserted, dead silent. Then I heard a sound from inside the ice machine, a soft bump, then another, then a slow, scraping sound, like fingernails lightly brushing against metal. My first thought was animal. Maybe a raccoon or something had crawled inside, but it didn't sound like that. It sounded deliberate, rhythmic, human. Bump, bump, bump. Scratch. Pause. Then again. I backed away, heart picking up a little. I wanted to write it off as the machine's compressor. Maybe it was just malfunctioning. But just as I turned to leave, it suddenly dispensed a chunk of ice into the bin, loud, mechanical, and unexpected. I flinched, and then I saw it. a scrap of red cloth, caught at the bottom lip of the dispenser, barely noticeable unless you were looking right at it. It looked like Par's shirt or jacket, frayed at the edges and soaked, like it had been frozen, and was now starting to thaw. I crouched down instinctively to get a better look, but something in me screamed to stop. And then, very clearly, just behind me, a whisper, "Don't." I whipped around so fast, I nearly lost my balance. No one. The space behind the ice machine was pitch black. Nothing but shadows and concrete. My skin went cold. Despite the heat in the air, every instinct I had told me to get the hell out of there. I walked fast, almost ran back to my room, locked the door, pulled the curtains tight. I didn't sleep much. Every sound made me jump. I left the TV on low just to have some noise. And I didn't go near the window again until morning. If you're enjoying these true scary stories, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments if anything like this has ever happened to you. Around 7 a.m., I checked out. As I was handing in the key, I casually mentioned to the front desk clerk, a different guy than the night before, that the ice machine sounded like it was broken. I didn't want to go into details, but something compelled me to say something. He gave me this strange look, not surprised, not confused, just tired, like he'd heard it before. "You were in room 218, right?" he asked. I nodded. He stared for a second, then said, "We've had people say stuff before, usually late at night. Just don't go back there alone again." I waited for him to explain, but he didn't. That was it. No clarification, just that vague warning. I didn't press it. I just nodded, walked out, and got back on the road. The sun was bright and warm, and everything felt completely normal again. But that image of the cloth, the footprints, and the whisper haunted me for the rest of the drive. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd ignored that whisper, if I'd opened the door to the ice machine just to check. I've stayed in a lot of cheap motels since then, but I never go near the ice machine anymore. If you're enjoying these true scary stories, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let me know in the comments if anything like this has ever happened to you. This happened during the summer before my senior year of college. My girlfriend and I decided to go on a short camping trip with another couple we were friends with, Matt and Kayla. We were all burnt out from finals, internships, and general life stress, and we wanted a quick escape. Nothing fancy, just a few days in nature to recharge. The four of us agreed we didn't want a crowded campground with screaming kids, generators humming all night, or RVs packed side by side. So Matt started searching for more remote options. Eventually, he found a small, off-the-map spot a few hours from our university. It was tucked inside a national forest, wrapped around a lake, and only had about 6 or 7 official campsites. No showers, no stores, just a fire ring, a picnic table, and a flat spot for a tent. We got there mid-afternoon on a Friday. It was everything we'd hoped for, quiet, surrounded by tall trees that filtered the sunlight like stained glass, and the lake was completely still. The air smelled like pine needles and warm dirt. At the tiny ranger station near the trailhead, we checked in and chatted with the guy working the desk. He told us we'd be the only campers that night. He mentioned someone had a reservation at the site across the lake the next night, but otherwise, we had the whole place to ourselves. Perfect. We hiked in with our gear, maybe a 20-minute walk in the parking area, and picked a spot with a view of the water. We set up our 2 tents, got a fire going, and by evening we were sitting around roasting hot dogs, drinking cheap beer, and laughing over dumb college memories. Honestly, it was exactly what we needed, just remote enough to feel like we were off the grid, but still close enough to civilization that we weren't worried. We even had a bar or 2 of self-service if we really needed it. Around midnight, we put out the fire and called it night. My girlfriend and I took 1 tent. Matt and Kayla had the other. The woods were incredibly quiet. No owls, no distant traffic. Just the sound of wind through the trees and the occasional ripple from the lake. At some point during the night, maybe 2:30 or 3 a.m., I woke up. I had to pee and didn't feel like fumbling with my shoes, so I unzipped the tent and stepped out barefoot onto the pine needles. That's when I noticed something weird. Through the trees, across the lake, there was a flicker of light, very faint, but unmistakably orange, the glow of a small fire. I blinked a few times, thinking I was imagining it, but no, it was real. A tiny fire, low to the ground, with occasional shadows flickering behind it. My first thought was that another group must have shown up late, but then I remembered what the ranger said. No one else was supposed to be out there. The next reservation wasn't until the following night. I stood there watching. No movement, no voices, just a soft light of fire barely visible through the trees across the water. Then something else caught my eye, a flashlight beam. It flicked across the trees behind the fire, back and forth like someone was pacing or searching, but not hurried, just a steady sweep of light. I figured maybe a ranger came in late to check the site, but it didn't feel right. The fire wasn't a pit. It just looked like it had been built directly in the dirt, kind of haphazardly. And then I saw the figure. Someone was standing near the fire, just standing. They weren't poking at the flames or sitting or even moving around. They were still, perfectly still, arms at their sides, staring out over the lake, not even swaying. I watched for maybe 30 seconds, and they didn't move once, just a silhouette, motionless. I started to feel weird, not scared exactly, but like I was seeing something I wasn't supposed to, like I was intruding. So I slipped back into the tent, zipped it up, and laid down. My girlfriend stirred and mumbled something, but I didn't want to wake her. I just stared at the top of the tent, heart beating a little faster than usual. The next morning, we were all eating oatmeal when I casually asked if anyone else had seen anything weird across the lake last night. Matt paused mid-bite. You saw that too? He had gotten up to use the bathroom around the same time and noticed the exact same thing. Small fire, a flashlight beam, and a figure standing silently beside it. He also said it didn't look like a normal campfire. It was just kind of glowing in a small pile on the ground. Kayla and my girlfriend both looked uneasy, but we shrugged it off. Maybe someone had hiked in without checking in. It wasn't strictly illegal, just unusual. That day we took a short hike around the ridge, and even swam in the lake for a bit. The water was ice cold, but it helped shake the tension. We didn't see or hear anyone else all day. No boats, no distant conversation, nothing. And that campsite across the lake, completely empty in daylight. No smoke, no signs of tent. Just trees and shoreline. It was like whoever had been there had disappeared. That night we were more cautious. We packed up all the food, made sure everything was zipped, and even chose to keep a flashlight right next to our sleeping bags. Something just felt off. Around midnight, we put the fire out and crawled into our tents. I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside felt like it could be something else. A twig snapping, wind moving the branches, distant water lapping against the shore. Then around 3 a.m., we heard it, a splash. Not a small one either. It sounded heavy, like someone stepping into the water. Slow, deliberate steps. We all heard it, even in our separate tents. I heard Kayla whisper something, and Matt respond quietly. My girlfriend grabbed my arm. We waited. Silence. No footsteps, no talking. Just stillness. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I unzipped the tent and peeked out. The fire was back. Same place. Same soft glow. And again, the figure. Only this time, it wasn't facing the lake. It was facing us. I felt my mouth go dry. I whispered to my girlfriend to look. She sat up slowly, peeked out, and saw it too. Then the flashlight came on. But instead of sweeping behind them like before, it was pointed directly at our sight, like a spotlight right at us. It didn't move, just held steady for maybe 10 seconds. Then it clicked off. No fire crackle, no footsteps, just dark. That was it. We didn't wait. We unzipped the tent, grabbed our stuff, and started waking Matt and Kayla. Within 15 minutes, we were hiking back toward the parking area by flashlight. It was pitch black, and probably not the safest choice, but all of us agreed. We weren't staying another second. When we got back to the ranger station after sunrise, we told the guy working what we saw. He looked at us for a long time, then finally said, "That site's been closed for months. Washed out during a storm. We insisted. Fire, flashlight, a person. All of it." He just rubbed the back of his neck and said, "You're not the first one to mention that." Then quietly, "I'll check it out." He didn't write anything down. We didn't press it. We got in our cars and left. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed, if we tried to cross the lake in daylight. But something about the stillness of that figure, the way it just watched, without moving, felt deeply wrong. I don't think it was anything supernatural, but it was something we weren't supposed to see. And someone who didn't want to be seen. I haven't been camping since. This happened during the summer. I stayed with my aunt and uncle in North Carolina. I was 19 at the time, home from college, and I needed a change of pace. They lived in a quiet, wooded area about 45 minutes outside of Raleigh. Not isolated exactly, but definitely more rural than what I was used to. The kind of place where the nights feel darker, the air smells like pine, and the quiet is so deep it almost hums. They had a big 2-story house that backed up to a thick patch of woods. It wasn't old or creepy looking, just one of those well-lived-in family homes. They let me stay in the guest room upstairs, across the hall from my cousin's room. He was away at a summer camp for a month, so it was just the 3 of us in the house. Or so I thought. The first few days were exactly what I needed. Peaceful. I helped out with yard work, went on runs in the mornings down long, winding roads lined with trees, and caught up on some reading. I even started sleeping better than I had in months. The house itself was quiet, but comfortable. A little creaky in some spots, especially the stairs in the upstairs hallway, but nothing that stood out. At night, I'd hear the wind push against the trees outside or the occasional owl hooting from the woods, but that was it until the 4th night. I went to bed around 11 p.m. like usual. The windows were cracked open to let the cool air in, and the house had settled into that stillness that only rural homes seem to get. Sometime in the middle of the night, I woke up to a sound. It was faint but distinct, a soft creaking, rhythmic, like slow footsteps on wood. I sat up and listened. At first, I thought it was one of my aunt or uncle getting up for water or heading to the bathroom. But the sound wasn't coming from downstairs or the bathroom down the hall. It was right outside my bedroom door. I checked my phone. 2:14 a.m. The footsteps continued. A few steps, then silence. Then another few, as if someone was trying to move without waking anyone. I got out of bed slowly and walked to the door. I didn't open it. I just pressed my ear against it and listened. At first, nothing. Then a floorboard creaked. One that I knew was just outside my door. I froze. My heart was racing, and I suddenly became hyper-aware of how thin that door felt. I didn't want to swing it open and catch someone by surprise, especially if it was just my uncle or something. But something about the stillness didn't sit right with me. It wasn't just quiet. It felt staged, like someone was trying to be silent. I stepped back, quietly locked the door, and climbed back into bed. I didn't fall asleep for a long time. The next morning over breakfast, I asked if either of them had gotten up during the night. My aunt looked puzzled and said no. My uncle shook his head. They'd both slept through the night. I let it go. That next night, though, I made sure the door was locked and even slid a small wooden chair in front of it. Not to block it entirely, just enough that it would be impossible to open the door without moving it. It gave me peace of mind. But again, I woke up, this time a little earlier, 2:03 a.m., and once again there were footsteps, soft, measured, pacing just outside my door. But this time there was something new, a faint tapping sound, not random, rhythmic, like fingers brushing or drumming softly along the wall. It would move down the hallway, then stop, then return, closer than before. At one point, it sounded like it was directly beside my head, just on the other side of the wall behind the bed. I held my breath, not even blinking. I wanted to believe it was a house settling or the wind playing tricks, but I couldn't convince myself of that anymore. Eventually, I turned on my phone flashlight and scanned the room. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The chair I'd wedged against the door, it had shifted, Not a lot, just a few inches. But it was no longer flush against the knob like I'd left it. It was angled ever so slightly, like it had been pushed. Not knocked over. Not moved dramatically. Just enough. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. If you're enjoying these stories, don't forget to leave a like and hit subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot and lets me keep sharing these real experiences. The next day, I told myself I might have bumped a chair in my sleep, or maybe gravity nudged it, but part of me didn't believe that, so I decided to test something. Before I went to bed, I did two things. First, I locked the door and wedged the chair tightly under the knob again. Then, I took a small piece of paper, like the kind from a receipt, and placed it carefully between the door and the frame, so it would fall if the door opened even slightly. That night, I woke up at 2:07 a.m. Footsteps again, same slow pacing. Then a creak, closer this time. Then silence. I reached for my phone and turned on the flashlight, heart pounding. The paper was on the floor. The chair slightly shifted again. I opened the door, suddenly fed up and ready to catch someone in the act. The hallway was empty. Every room was dark and quiet. I checked my aunt and uncle's room. They were fast asleep. I don't know why, but I turned and looked into my cousin's room, the one across the hall. It hadn't been touched since he left for camp. Same neatly made bed, same posters on the wall, closet door closed, windows locked, but something was different. On the carpet beside the bed, two faint indentations, kneeling marks, no footsteps leading in, just those two spots like someone had been there for a long time, motionless. I left the door open and walked backward into the hall. The next morning, I finally told my aunt and uncle everything. Every noise, every step, every shift in the chair. At first, they were quiet. Then my uncle asked, "Did you lock the door every night?" I said yes. He nodded slowly, then told me something I wish I'd known earlier. 2 years prior, a neighbor's teenage son, someone with a history of mental health issues and a record of breaking into homes, had been caught sneaking into their garage late one night. He didn't take anything, just stood in the dark until a motion light clicked on. He was arrested but released a few months later. They hadn't seen him since. After that, strange things would happen occasionally in the summer. A basement door left ajar, a window unlatched, a set of keys found outside. They assumed they were just being paranoid. But now they weren't so sure. That very day, they installed a small camera in the upstairs hallway, aimed directly at the doors, mine and my cousin's. The rest of my stay was uneventful. No more footsteps, no more tapping, until the last night. At 1:59 a.m., the camera recorded the hallway. It was still. Nothing moved. Then at 2:01, the motion detector triggered again. This time, the door to my cousin's room opened. Not all the way, just a few inches. No figure, no sound. It stayed open for 15 minutes. Then, slowly it closed again. No one came in or out. No one was awake. There was no draft, no window open. Nothing that could have caused it. We watched that footage 3 times, and I still don't have an explanation. It's been over a year now. They haven't had any more strange activity. But the hallway camera is still there, still on, still watching. And me? I haven't stayed in that room since. If you found these stories creepy, please leave a like, share with a friend, and hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video. And if you have your own scary experience, drop in the comments. I might read it in a future episode.